Joe Biden is running. ABC and others now reporting that not only is he definitely running, but he will announce next week. They believe the announcement will come on Tuesday. And to this, you say what? I know you're not a fan. You've been openly critical. What do you make of the fact that the 80-year-old Joe Biden will run for president for a second term?
Well, I think I understand the game plan that the Democrats have, which is essentially the game plan that they had in 2020. He's the candidate they can come up with who can beat Donald Trump. And so they have decided to replay that particular script. And I think it's very, very risky for them. And I'll tell you why. First of all, a significant proportion of voters are already aware that President Biden is, shall we say, on the old side for the world's most stressful job. Secondly, and more importantly, between now and that day in November of 2024, when the votes get cast, or at least most of them get cast, there's very likely to be a recession. The probability of a recession starting sometime this year is certainly north of 50%. Larry Summers told me the other day 80%. So between now and the election, there's going to be a recession. And it must be said that presidents who go for re-election with a recession in the pipeline don't have a great track record. So my sense is that they think they know what they're doing, but they're underestimating the downside risk. Because my own view is that at this point, Donald Trump is the favorite to win the Republican nomination, and whoever is the Republican candidate is quite likely to win next year if there's a recession.
Yeah, if there's a recession. The thing about Trump is, as much baggage as he has, that economy under Trump pre-COVID is unforgettable. I mean,
Right.
He'll be there to remind people of it, in case it is.
Megyn, I think people have not fully grasped the consequences of such significant interest rate hikes by the Fed in response to the huge inflation mistake that the Biden administration made in 2021 have yet to feed fully through, particularly to the labor market, which is still pretty hot. But there's a kind of chain reaction that happens when the central bank tightens interest rates. And it takes a little while to hit the ordinary household, but I think hit it, it will. And when that happens, people are going to start looking back on the Trump economy. They're no longer going to have such a sense that he mishandled the pandemic, because after all, more people died in 2021 of COVID than in 2020. And I think if President Trump plays his cards right and emphasizes that they had full employment under Donald Trump, but pretty much no inflation problem, a lot of people who turned away from him in 2020 are going to be tempted to turn back, because the combination of much higher inflation, which we've had, followed by a recession, is a combination that loses you elections historically. So I think this is the way I'm seeing it right now. A lot can happen, of course. We're a long way off from the election. But the assumption that they've got a winning formula that will beat Donald Trump under any circumstances, I don't think that's the correct lesson of 2020. 2020 was a very exceptional year to hold an election. Donald Trump had mishandled the way he dealt with the pandemic. He was in a weak position that he wouldn't have been in. Without the pandemic, I think he'd have been reelected. And now we're all pretty much over the pandemic, apart from a few people still clinging to their masks here in Northern California. And that means that the circumstances in 2024 will be radically different.
You seem to be pro-Trump in a lot of your writings. Ayan seems to be more pro-DeSantis. She wrote a column not long ago saying, we got to move past Trump. Is that still where you are?
I was never unconditionally pro-Trump, Megyn. I was ambivalent from the outset. And when I look back on the things that I wrote in 2020, I was, and indeed in 2016, I was ambivalent from the get-go. And I think there are many things about Governor DeSantis that are appealing for those of us who found the Trump years exhausting because of his chaotic approach to government. It would be lovely to have those elements of Trumpism, the policy elements that worked well, particularly for the economy, but also I would say for foreign policy, but without the chaos, without the sense that every day your hair was on fire from the minute the alarm clock went off. And I think that's the dream that DeSantis is supposed to represent. But at this point, I don't think he's succeeding in conveying that he's Trump with competence. And that is why at this point, the polling is showing Trump establishing a dominating lead. So I'm still ambivalent. I slightly kind of shudder at the thought of a second Trump term, but I think at the moment I shudder more at the thought of another Biden term, because I do think that if one strips away all the fairly positive media coverage that this administration gets, it's done shockingly on both the economy, where we've had this inflation mistake, I think mistakes understating it, and foreign policy, where I think things have really been pretty disastrous. If you asked me, would I prefer DeSantis over Trump, then I think probably I would, in common with a lot of conservative elites. But that is not where the primary voters are right now. As far as the polling shows, primary voters are leaning ever further in the direction of renominating Donald Trump. And in the end, it's not up to people like me, is it?
Experts say that China is hoarding a massive amount of food. They will soon have over 2/3 of the globe's corn reserves, over half of its rice, and over half of its wheat. But when asked about it, China misleads. One China expert says they, of course, would never admit to something like that. Well, what does China know that we do not? When it comes to global food shortages, China may be the canary in the coal mine. You see, China's the world's #1 food importer. They rely on the rest of the world to keep their people fed, so they cannot afford to mess it up, or there could be civil unrest, or worse. That's why it's a smart idea to stock up on a kit of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. Hand-packed in the USA, the kits are compact and stack easily. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And their 5-star reviews on the website rave about the flavor and the taste. Right now, you can get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food by typing in the code MK at checkout. Just go to 4patriots.com. Use that code MK to get 10% off your first purchase of 4 Patriots survival food. 4patriots.com. Use code MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.